Welcome to something that's a bit late, I will admit. A bit later than what most people have been doing for this. But it's going to be my Premier League predictions. Um, I've got I've got some notes, so it's not going to be completely, you know, garbage. But I'm going to try to go in alphabetical order, of course. Um, this is nowhere near being in alphabetical order, however. Um, it's fine. We'll deal with it, whatever. So, um, first team that we're gonna get started with is AFC Bournemouth. I have Bournemouth finishing in about 11th place. Um, obviously they did do not the best last season, obviously finishing 15th, but uh, they brought in Clivert, who I feel is gonna actually be very well for them. Um, they did lose Sariki Dembele, but it's not the biggest loss in the world. So I think a respectable 11th place for AFC Bournemouth. Next up is Arsenal. Where do I think the Gunners are going to finish? Well, I think it's going to be a bit of a drop off from last season. I don't think that they're going to do nearly as well. Um, obviously, last season they had that spectacular run, finished barely missed out, and ended up not winning the league, which I think a lot of people would have expected out of them. But um, I have them finishing fourth. Now, why fourth? Obviously, the bringing in of Declan Rice, Urian Timber, and Kai Havertz, it's massive, and to only lose Granit Xhaka over that whole time frame is really good, to be honest. It's really, really good for Arsenal. But the issue from this comes last season, they obviously fell off towards the end of the season. This season, they've got to deal with Champions League, and if they want to have a shot at winning the league, they either have to get more depth, because yeah, they brought in good depth, but you look at that striker position, all they have is Jesus. Yeah, they have Balogun back on loan, but he doesn't want to be there. He wants to start, and Eddie Nketiah is not going to be good enough to start every single game if something happens to Jesus. And yeah, you could make a case for Kai Havertz playing at that striker role, but I just don't see that ending well. And I mean, we saw how Kai Havertz did in that little MLS thing. He did not do well at all. Severely underperformed. So that's why I have Arsenal finishing fourth. Next up, we have Aston Villa. I have Villa finishing in that Europa Conference League position. Um, they haven't lost anybody massive as of yet, and bringing in Pau Torres from Villarreal is really good, and Yuri Telemans on a free is even better. But the quality around them is just too good. So I think they'll do well, but still end up finishing in that Conference League position and ending up seventh. Next up, we have Brentford. Brentford, bit of a weird one. I'm gonna be honest. Uh, they've basically just raided um Freiburg, like literally. Kevin Schade and Mark Flecken both were at Freiburg, and obviously Nathan Collins from what was it, Wolves, I think it was. And only losing really Mads Bidstrup. I mean, not the biggest loss, but still. And Ivan Toney for the half the season. I think that's going to be the struggle of the season. That opening period of the season where they don't have Ivan Toney. That's where they're really going to struggle. Then they're going to pick it up once he's back, obviously, after January. And that's when they'll get into form. That's when they'll end up moving back up the table. But I think they'll still really, really struggle. Up next, we have the Hove. Brighton and Hove Albion, who I have finishing a respectable 8th place. They've done some pretty decent business, I'll be honest. Milner in a free, he's 37 going on 38 now. So, he's not going to start every game. He's not going to play as much. But, he's still a solid player. Mahmoud Dahoud, obviously coming off that Dortmund side that just barely lost the league, which is pretty massive. And in on a free as well, I'm pretty sure it was. And then Bart Verbruggen in from Anderlecht. Good young goalkeeper, but I still see Robert Sanchez starting. And obviously the big loss being Alexis McAllister going to Liverpool, of course. It'll be interesting to see how Brighton cope without having McAllister. But I still think that they'll do fairly well. But not nearly as well as that 6th place finish that they had last season. Up next, we've got Burnley. Burnley, I see Burnley surviving the drop. I see them getting a nice little 14th place. They've obviously done some very good business for a recently promoted side. I really like Vincent Kompany. He's a wonderful manager. And they have lost Ashley Barnes, but he's getting up there in age. So it's kind of okay that Barnes is gone. But I think Burnley, it's obviously promoted side back in the Premier League. And it's not an easy place to be. But I do think that they're gonna do well, but they're still gonna struggle a little bit. And that's why I have them finishing 13th. Or 14th, sorry. Up next we have Chelsea. This is the one that I know is not going to end well. I have Chelsea finishing 10th in the league. Why? They've lost an incredible amount of key players, as you can see right here. I mean, Pulisic, Azpilicueta, Mason Mount, Havertz, Mendy, N'Golo Kante, Kalidou Koulibaly, which I put a C there actually, Mateo Kovacic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I know he doesn't play as much, but still, Timo Bakayoko, and only have brought in Nkunku and Nicholas Jackson. Yes, they have severely lacked at that striker role, but now they're not going to have the supporting cast for the striker role. And now they've just lost Wesley Fofana for pretty much the entire season. And I think they'll bounce back a little bit, but nowhere near enough to get European football. Up next, Palace. And Palace, I actually have finishing above Chelsea in ninth. Um, they brought in Jefferson Lerma only so far, but that team is young, and they're only going to get better every season. I mean, you can see just over the past 3 years, they've gone up at least one position every season. And I think that trend will continue. I think that they'll just keep rising, and they're going to be a team to watch out for. And if they can keep that young core, they're going to be a team to fear in a few years. Up next, we have the first of my relegated sides, uh, Everton. Look, this Everton team is not good. Like, I'm going to be the first to say it. They're not. They've struggled heavily over the past few years, and they've really not brought anybody in. I mean, I have Ashley Young down, but that was a bit of a stretch. And every season they've survived by on literally the last day of the league. So I think this season's the season where they'll finally just crack and get relegated. And I'm not gonna say I'm gonna miss them because I really don't. I would not miss them at all. Up next, we've got Fulham. And I have Fulham finishing 12th. Um, Obviously they finished 10th last season. Haven't brought anybody in yet, and a lot of the loans that they got last season have expired. But I think as long as Mitrovic can stay healthy, and if they can bring in some better players, some more crucial players for the side, I think that they'll actually do very well this season, and I think they'll be able to survive the job. Up next, it's Liverpool. Um, I have Liverpool finishing second. Like, I'm gonna just say that right off the bat. Last season was very cruel to us. Um, but we haven't. I wouldn't say we've lost too many key players. I mean, obviously, Firmino is a big loss. James Milner's a big loss. Henderson, like, pretty much confirmed going to Saudi Arabia as well as Fabinho. Two, again, big losses. But I do like Szoboszlai. I love the signing of Szoboszlai. And McAllister I mean, it's McAllister. But you know what you're getting when you sign Alexis McAllister, which is really good. And potentially Romeo Lavia. I know there's also been Kefren Turam thrown around, but Turam's out of the question now. But Lavia is still very much right there, and it could be one of those either Fabinho goes, we sign in Lavia, or it gets to January and they're struggling, Lavia comes in. But who knows? Next up, a team that absolutely no one has any hope for. Luton Town. And guess what? They're surviving. I believe in Luton. Alright? Obviously, Nakamba, Drama, and Horvath leaving is really big. But we love Chong. What else can I say? You have to love Chong. And I think Luton are going to survive it. I think they've got that fight. And it's going to come down to literally the last day of the season. But they're going to survive. So, Luton Town, 17th. Watch out for them. Up next, I mean, if you don't have them here, you're kind of you don't pay attention to the sport at all. Man City, they're winning the league. I mean, they've only lost Gundogan and potentially Mahrez. He's potentially going to Saudi Arabia. And they brought in Kovacic, who I'm not saying is better than Gundogan, but it's a decent replacement. Obviously, Gundogan showed up big at the end of the season for City. And if it weren't for this next signing, I'd say it might be a closer race. But if they get Josko Gvardiol, which is almost completely confirmed, it's not looking good for anybody else. Because Gvardiol is very good, and I don't see many teams being able to compete with City if they get Gvardiol. So, yeah. Up next, we have the red half of Manchester, Manchester United. I have them finishing third. They've they've done some decent business, to be honest. Mason Mount in from Chelsea. I see him fitting well and hopefully helping that team a bit. Um, there's also Rasmus Højlund, apparently, that United are really pushing for. And Andre Onana is pretty much 100% at this point. And to only have lost David De Gea for all that is pretty big. And of course, De Gea is, the big guy for United. I mean, you think of crucial players for Man U, you think of David De Gea. And it will be a bit of an adjustment with Onana in goal, but I think he'll still do very well. I mean, he did wonderful for Inter last season. And I see United doing well, but I don't see them being able to challenge for the title. So I have them finishing third. If they get Højlund, though, it could change. Up next, Newcastle. And they're not finishing in top four for me. They're finishing fifth. They haven't gotten rid of anybody that's been massive for them quite yet, but the noticeable issue is the signing of Sandro Tonali. He does not want to be there. You can tell in everything that he's done, he does not want to be at that team. So I think if he starts, he's not going to do well for them. And I could see him going back to Milan either in January or beginning of next season. So, and Harvey Barnes is apparently on his way in with Alan St. Maximin on his way out. I like Harvey Barnes. ASM's good, but I don't think that's going to be enough to carry that Newcastle team back up into the top four. Getting into the final five teams here. Up next, we have Nottingham Forest, who I have finishing at the front of that lower mid-table spot. Have them finish in 13th. Have not brought anybody in yet. They've obviously lost Navas, Renan Lodi, Chris Wood, and Henderson, and that could honestly see them drop. But I think that since they've just finally adjusted to the Premier League, I think they'll do very well next season. I rate Iwaniwi a lot. He's very good. obviously cooked Liverpool. So, but I think Forest will struggle a little bit, but not enough to see them get relegated. Next up, we have the side that I see finishing dead last in the league, Sheffield United. Um, the team, they've brought in some quality people, of course, but losing James McAtee and Tommy Doyle is that's not good for them. Um, and you look at the season where they did stay up, the team is not the caliber that it needs to be for Premier League. Um, I don't think Wes Fondringham is the goalie for that team, and Iliman Ndiaye is linked back and forth in and out of that club. Obviously, Marseille came in for him, then Sheffield said no, and then Marseille came back for him, and now it's just some back and forth. But I think with or without Ndiaye, they don't stay up. So it's going to be a struggle, but I don't see Sheffield surviving, so I have them finishing 20th. Next up, Tottenham. Got them finishing 6th. They've done very well in the transfer window this season. Bringing Kulusevski in permanently, bringing in Vicario for Hugo Lloris, and obviously the big transfer, James Maddison from Leicester. I like it. To be honest, I do. But the glaringly obvious issue is Harry Kane. Does he stay? Bayern are pushing for him, and if he doesn't, that's where I see Tottenham struggling to finish in the top 6. But I don't think that that team really has the quality needed to finish top 4. So that's why I've got him at 6th. Into the final 2 teams. Next up, we have West Ham, who I have just barely surviving the drop in 16th. Have not brought really anybody in yet, and it's obvious that they're going to struggle. No Declan Rice, and every season really that they've had, they played in Europe, that next season that they have heavily struggled. And they're in Europe again this season. Obviously, winning Conference League gets them an automatic Europa League spot. And without Declan Rice, either one, that team might not even finish out of their group, and 2, they're going to really struggle to survive in the league. Lastly, Wolverhampton Wanderers. I believe that their time in the Premier League is over. Have not brought really in anybody of note, and obviously they've lost Ruben Neves. Going to Saudi Arabia, the mainstay in that team, the anchor really, and without him, they're gonna struggle. They've already been struggling really with him, and I think that this is the season where they finally just crack, and they're gonna slip, and it's just not gonna end well. Raul Jimenez isn't producing as much as he needs to be since that head injury, and I think Wolves are gonna slip, and they're gonna find themselves in the championship next season. But that's my final team. Not my final team. My final league. Um, I like it, and please either leave your predictions down in the comments or um, tell me what you think of mine. And yeah, till next time. Peace.